and a few other Region 5 live members like Denver and Galveston Bay, and as well as the local concern network. Louis, the head of the chair for that concern network. This concern network is a group of mostly experienced engineers who kind of get together. We try to help each other on professional and social networking, and also lead for consulting gigs, and we share our skill and sharing potential opportunities. And there's a link there. It's a EWH.org, Alpha Central Texas CN. And to be a live member, to join this group, you have to be 65, and plus your year of IEEE membership will be greater or equal than 100. Then you can be automatically, you'll be a member, and you have to pay a fee, and you have some extra spending money from the IEEE Foundation. And we hold monthly meetings, and mostly technical, and others are general interest. And this is our link for our webpage. And we like to have future topics that include, you can be our speaker for one of the events. We like technology, so 5G, 6G, IoT, AI, smart city are some of the popular topics and speakers. And also we will look at the finance, hobby, travel, education, and we like to hear your story about your career and your contribution to the society. And of course, we're concerned about aging and health topics, and also like to review some of the engineering and history and science history, and as well as I want to do some tours occasionally. These are our current membership member officers. You can see we have a couple of double in both events, like Bill Marino and myself are in both programs. And we have normally in November, we'll have the 2024 election. So we're looking for a vice chair in the concern network group, and also the webmaster. And also, if you're interested and have time, and I welcome you to contact either myself or Louis Basso to be our next year's leadership team. And one announcement, we'll have a live member, the first inaugural live member conference will be held in Austin from April 14 to 16 in Hyatt Regency Hotel. And there will be a number of good speakers and technology, a lot of technology topic, health topic, and mentoring topic will be included, and also some workshop and some company corporate tour for some local corporations. And more information and the website will be available in November. And we welcome all the live member, IEEE live member, or the potential live member. That means 55 plus IEEE members to join our meeting. We also need volunteers for this event. We'll finally look at the student body from UT or San Marcos, Texas Tech. And for next month, and we have a networking event, a lunch at the one of the county line restaurant barbecue. And December, normally we don't have any meetings. And we'll meet again for technical meeting in January. Tonight's topic is biotech and the convergence of conventional and emerging technology. The speaker is Dr. Scott Colllins, and he's the Chief Strategy Officer of Austin Innovation Group since 2020. And he's also the board director and president of BioAustin, Texas, Central Texas, organization since 2013. He's also a founding partner of Text GXS. It's based in Houston, Innovation Consortium. And he also involved in a local startup by advisor of the Austin Technology Incubator, or ATI, in short, of the part of UT program. And Scott received his biomed PhD from UT Austin. And I think you already met the introduction of the content. So I give the floor to Scott, and I'll stop sharing. Scott, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's see. Let me get the screen up here. There we go. Okay. Well, thanks for the opportunity to talk about something I'm pretty passionate about, and I've kind of focused my career in this area. I kind of jump in and out of it occasionally, but it's, I think one of the best applications of technology out there is applying it towards health and helping humans and animals become better. And those are some of the things that motivated me. Just kind of a quick anecdote. When I was in high school building robots for science fairs, one of the events, one of the people came up to me and said, why are you building robots? Won't they put everybody out of work? And I never really thought about that. So then I figured, well, how are we going to apply these? And I thought at the time, what we might do is apply it towards health, to rebuild arms that were, deformed or injured in some way and things like that. I never really got into that specifically, but that kind of got me thinking about the application of technology to health instead of some other areas. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on myself, and I think this will help flavor some of the comments I make and give you a little bit of a perspective. And just to let you know, if anyone has any questions, feel free to just kind of jump in and let me know, or I'll stop every now and then and ask as well. But, I want this to be kind of an interactive thing. I'm going to present a lot of different things. Some I know more about than others, but, just hope to help y'all understand a little bit more about this space. As Kai mentioned, my doctoral work was in biomedical engineering at the University of Texas. I did a lot of the work in Austin, but also some down at the Health Center and the Texas Heart Institute in Houston. And a lot of this work was around the general category of tissue engineering and regenerative medicine. So what I was doing is I was creating scaffolds based on what's in a blood clot, basically, and creating and putting human cells inside and helping coax them to become microvessels. So like the blood vessels that we need to get oxygen and nutrients to our tissue. One of the challenges of tissue engineering in general is that if the tissues get beyond about 1/10 of a millimeter to 1/2 millimeter in thickness, the interior cells will die because they'll starve to death, or they won't get the nutrients they need, or they won't be able to get rid of the waste. So the vascular network is needed for any significant tissue or organ engineering that we might do in the future. So that's kind of where I concentrated my work there. Prior to the doctoral work, I had founded and eventually sold a company in the software and IT space that I started after leaving a cardiology company, which was my first employment after my electrical engineering undergraduate work. In the cardiology company, we were doing some early work in analyzing the signals from the heart. And basically, I created, as far as we know, the first multi-processing system for real-time analysis of cardiac signals. And the goal of the work was to take these signals, look at them, apply artificial intelligence, at the time we called it chaos theory, towards it in a way that would allow us to predict when the heart was going to move from one state to another state. So for instance, going from your normal rhythm to a arrhythmia, which could be life-threatening. And the idea was, instead of waiting until it got to that state and then applying a lot of energy, which took a lot of batteries and caused a lot of downstream problems, we could steer it back on course. So that was another thing that kind of really got me more focused in the on the bio side of things. Yeah, go ahead.
Scott, are you sharing your page? We only see the front page.
Oh, yeah, I'm still on the front page. I'll get there in a second.
Good. Okay.
No, I appreciate that. And let me actually go to that now and give you a little more entertainment there. After graduating, I did a little international healthcare philanthropy for a while, and then eventually became CTO of a group called Tavito Biodevices. And that company had the inventor of bioprinting, which is basically like 3D printing of cells and tissue. And we were applying it towards rebuilding the body after cancer. So the idea was, the inventor of bioprinting on our team, he went and ballistically shot cells out of a printer and was able to have them survive after they hit glass. No one thought it could happen. It did. And that kind of opened the beginnings of bioprinting that we see today. But bioprinting is like 3D printing in the stage to where you create 3D structures, but we're sending out, instead of plastics and metals, we're sending out cells and cell-based components to be able to create, hopefully, whether it be an experiment or a tissue or eventually organs. After leaving this company, I started Austin Innovation Group. And Austin Innovation Group works with deep tech companies to help them and their leadership succeed quicker. So how that looks is we're either interim C-level executives for the company if they're starting up, or we supplement the ones that are there, offloading some of the tasks that they have. A lot of times what that looks like is a technology assessment where we'll go in and look at all of the technology that they have, where they're planning on going. A lot of this has a lot of science and engineering in it. And we'll help show them areas where they might be able to get there quicker, or partnerships that they might be able to do to get to the market quicker and generate revenue, keep themselves alive. Occasionally, that will turn into a skunkworks project that we occasionally lead for them, working with their own employees and our own people. So enough about that. In today's presentation, I'm going to tell you a little bit about biotechnology, what it is, and how it's evolving. So biotechnology in the past kind of came from a lot of the biologic standpoint, learning how cells work, learning how tissues work, vaccines, things like that. And it's really kind of integrating with technology in a lot of ways these days, which I think will accelerate it quicker, but it's still in an ecosystem, the healthcare ecosystem, which is slow to adopt new technologies and so forth. So I'm going to talk about a lot of them. If you want to go into some of how these technologies get to the market, please let me know. And I want to hear your ideas. If you have a technology that you think could be applied to health or biotechnology, let me know, because I'm always looking for new innovative ways to solve old problems. So biotechnology, again, is kind of the convergence of biology, cells, tissues, organs, humans, animals, plants, anything that's biologic with technology to either do something back to that biology or to help us diagnose or cure problems with disease and other ailments. It can also be used to improve the performance of things like you see in genetically modified crops and so forth, which I'm not going to get into here, but some of the technologies that can be utilized to cure cancer might also increase crop yields, make them more resistant, or cause allergies down the road. So there's a lot of things that can happen there. Let's see. So one of the big applications in health that we're hearing a lot about now is artificial intelligence and machine learning. Kind of breaking down health in general. I'm talking from health more than the bio side right now, but from the health side, there's a lot of data produced. So, we might have blood work done, and that might be a kilobyte of data, but we also might have some imaging work done, a CAT scan or MRI, which could be in the gigabytes. Taking this information and extracting what is valuable out of it is a laborious process. It requires people with a lot of education, skill, and practice. A lot of doctors will talk about their practice because they're always getting better, practicing at it. Well, AI and ML can sometimes offload some of that and supplement it and help them see things that they might not see otherwise, but it doesn't take the human out of the loop. And one of the things that is important, I think, that's very difficult for humans to do, which is to process information coming from from a lot of different streams and then find predictive value out of that. So for instance, blood work that you do at an annual physical exam, it's going to change over time. Do we know what that means? Right now, the normal clinical process is look at it, and if it's out of range, address it if there's a symptom as well. But we might be able to predict the onset of these symptoms earlier if we apply things like artificial intelligence to it, and be able to see before a condition happens, before the symptoms of the condition happen, and cure it before then. So that's kind of one of the goals of this area. The information going into it is important. How we look at it is important. Some people are taking artificial intelligence and just throwing in a whole bunch of data that really has no bearing on patients or outcome, and assuming that they're going to get the right information from it. And with a set of data they train it on, that might happen. But will it expand to the more global population is a question that needs to be answered. For instance, there are a lot of groups that are putting genetic information in that they might have from 23andMe or one of the groups that might have sequenced their genome. They take that data and try to extract information from it. How diverse is that information? What and under what conditions is it taken? And anyway, there's a lot of questions involved with that add to complexity, but add to the interest of this as a way to hopefully solve problems and conditions quicker. I'm going to stop for just a second. Does anyone have any questions on the AI side?
Yeah, I do.
Yes.
I'm curious what would happen to people's labor use, like physical labor. Artificial intelligence, just what it means, it's artificial intelligence. It's not a genuine intelligence, it's an artificial intelligence. So I was curious how the labor part of doing stuff would impact AI. I suppose that's another way of asking the same question. Anyway.
Yeah, let me try to answer it, and you can let me know if I answered that or not. But one of the, there were a lot of concerns in early AI applied to some imaging areas, to where people that are diagnosing X-rays for breast cancer, for instance, this is one of the areas I know about, would go through and try to find, they look at it, and based on their experience, they know if they had something that was probable cancer or not, and then they go into the next area. When some of the early AIs were applied towards that method, people were talking about, hey, AI could be better in this, very defined case than the clinicians, we ought to replace them. But that was not the right way to go. The right way to go, which is the way it originally went, was that AI came out so a radiologist would look at a screen and decide whether he thought the patient had cancer or not. Then the AI will come in and say what it thought, and then the clinician can go back and change his opinion or not. So it was designed as kind of a second look that sometimes might catch things, other times might be wrong. And that same process, interestingly, in theory, could be used to even train the AI more. But the whole idea is to give the information to humans, because AI doesn't have any empathy. AI doesn't really understand the condition of the patient that doctor might be seeing. So right now, anyway, it is used as a tool typically for the clinicians to provide better service to the patient. It is possible that AIs could offer early diagnoses in areas to where you might not have to go see the clinician, but we're not quite there yet. Did that answer your question?
Well, partially, but I was wondering, I should rephrase it. When I use the word labor, I meant the knowledge of a doctor or somebody who is reviewing AI. So it's basically a knowledge.
Right.
Like mostly engineers don't have this kind of knowledge. But the fact of this particular matter is that AI will remove, in my opinion, AI is going to remove a lot of employment roles. I mean, like Walmart is doing robo cleaning and all that stuff, or setting up this whole darn thing. I'm just giving an example. So the fact of this particular matter is the labor force, whether it's a knowledgeable labor force or something else labor force, will be removed mostly. AI cannot be everything for everybody, in my opinion.
Can I just add here? I would like to have a speaker give the whole presentation, then we can ask the question. I know I've got some questions, but I don't think it will be a good idea to interrupt the speaker. Let him finish it, and then we can ask all these questions and comments.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean,
no, and I said I don't mind if you interrupt me. I think it's a good question, and I'll get to that at the end a little bit. But just real quick, I'm talking more of the AI applied towards health, to where it might create another way to look at it too, kind of on the other side. And these are things we really need to look at intelligently and as a society as well. But how is it possible that we could create someone that could, where AI I think helps the most is, can it learn more than a human brain? That's a question, but the thing is, it can respond quicker. So it could go through like a lot of images, finding patterns and things like that. But yeah, we'll jump into that a little bit more as we have time. So the next area that I'm going to talk about is nanotechnology. So nanotechnology is basically things that are about 100 nanometers or smaller. And what's interesting with nanotechnology is that the physics starts behaving a little bit differently. And the reason for that is that we start increasing, when we decrease the volume of these particles, the surface area to volume ratio changes dramatically. So we're really run a lot by the surface more than the volume. And in some ways that's good, in some ways that's bad. But how it helps in biotechnology and in health in general is nanoparticles can get to cells anywhere in the body through the bloodstream. I'm talking in generality here, but they can get, they're smaller than cells, and they can get into cells and get to areas that we may not be able to get conventional drugs. But the fact that it is a physical entity, we can engineer it in certain ways. So like is shown generally in this graphic here, you can take a nanoparticle, you can put it on the surface, they call it decorating it with substances that can bind to specific markers on specific cells and specific people. So for instance, where a lot of the work has been done on this is in cancer. So cancer cells express different things, or they don't express certain things that other cells do, that we could take advantage of. And the idea is we can deliver a load of cells with either a therapeutic agent or imaging agent in it to either kill the cancer cells or allow us to see them in imaging, or do both. And it offers the ability to do like a two-stage deployment of this. If you know where the cancer is, have the cells just through through an IV, have the cells go into the body, have them accumulate at the cancer, and then with the secondary thing of radiation, whether it be light or whether it be X-rays or whether it be magnets or something like that, we can go in and then have it deploy its chemotherapy agent, which will make sure we kill cells only in that area. And why this matters, this targeted delivery area, is that a lot of the limit of using the drugs that we use for almost every condition is the toxicity of those drugs on your body as a whole. So for instance, if we could, the chemotherapy agents, we give a lot more if your body could stand it, but it can't. But if we concentrate those drugs in the area of the cancer or any other disease state, then we can do things possibly quicker and better with less systemic interaction. So that's one of the areas we're using nanotechnology. One of the other areas is in imaging. So a lot of my work, and I'll show a slide of it later, we can utilize these particles to hone into specific markers on cells so we can see how they're behaving, whether it be in the lab or whether it be in a host. So jumping to the next. I'm sure a lot of you have heard something about the DNA editing, the Cas9 systems for inserting DNA into cells that they're utilizing in various ways. So this is relatively new. It's been going on in the bacterial world for a while, and we've kind of been able to engineer this to work with human cells as well. And what they're able to do is to go in and change the DNA programming of the cell. So the way cells are very complex, and I've thought a lot about them, and I won't go into all the detail, but in the cell, you have a cell that acts as a unit. It interacts with other cells around it, with other structures around it, with chemical signals that it senses, and it will react over time to those things. It's a really complicated pathway of the way everything kind of fits together. But the basis of it is the DNA, and that's what we're born with, and all of our cells at least start off with that same DNA. And if there is a disease like, most of the genetic diseases that might happen, they may manifest themselves immediately at birth or later in life. the promise is that we might be able to go back in and edit those cells and make them so that disease goes away. We're a ways away from that, but some of the way that they're using it now is to engineer cell lines that have a disease state so that we can test to see if new drugs will work on them, or to see if we can find them. We're also able to create animal models that might have those diseases to advance science quicker without throwing a bunch of human guinea pigs into the mix. Jump to the next one. So I'm gonna get into bioprinting, but first kind of a little bit back to conventional 3D printing and how it works in health. So some of the ways, the early ways that 3D printing is getting into health is in creating models for surgeons. So what you see here are a number of I think the top left is a kidney with a tumor on it. The surgeon can see that. We can take the imaging work from the CAT scan or the MRI and create something that's the same size and shape and has the same consistency basically as that tumor that they haven't opened the patient up to get yet. And they can practice on surgical techniques on how to get to it. This is really important when the tumor might be near the spine or the brain or a major organ system, and it helps the doctors practice before they actually get into the patient. Some of the other areas it's been used is to create, like I was mentioning prosthetics earlier, it could create limbs that look more like limbs. It doesn't necessarily give a whole lot more functionality, which people are working on, but it can actually look more like a limb. And some of the work I've done in Haiti has shown that a lot of the, or that I know of, showed that a lot of the people that after the earthquakes in 2010 who lost limbs, they really want it to look like the people around them. That was really important to their culture. 3D printing allowed some of that to happen. So the way bioprinting works, how many are y'all familiar with 3D printing in general?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, it's kind of basically you're scanning over an area, you're putting down what you want to, whether it be plastic, metal. In our case, we're putting cells, tissues, and biological agents. And you're creating a 3D structure over time, layer by layer. In bioprinting, it works basically the same way, but there are some differences. When you are printing cells, you have to do a lot of environmental things that you can't have. So for instance, you have to keep the area sterile. You have to be able to clean it so you don't get cross-contamination to the next print that you're doing. The humidity matters, the heat matters, and a lot of other things matter as well. So when I was CTOing that company doing bioprinting, what we did in the evolution of the printer was we gave other methods of printing, increased some of those orders of magnitude in their functionality. But also we did things to record the data and be able to basically get more data so we can learn over time how to do that process better. But functionally, it works the same way. But when you get done printing something, that's the 3D part of it. But then the 4D kicks in. The cells will remodel their matrix. So they'll remodel the way they were laid down, and they will actually create their own scaffolding structures within that sequence. So the idea is we take cells that know what to do in the right environment, and we print them in a way that we're hoping for them to become something else. And the work I was doing was trying to get them to be vascularized tissues that would survive implant, which is difficult to do. So this kind of brings together some of the work that I've done and some of the imaging. These were not actually printed. These are cells that we have in fibrin-based scaffolds. What is fibrin? Fibrin is the big component of blood clots. So it was a biologic substance that would actually fade away over time. And we wanted the cells to create their own structures to be more like adult tissue. And these are areas where, like on the left, you see endothelial and mesenchymal cells, which is a type of adult stem cell that we all have, growing away and creating vascular-like conduits away from a structure. This requires a lot of imaging and a lot of data. I didn't have the advances of AI and ML at the time to analyze this, so this took a lot of time for myself and some grad students I had working with me. But anyway, we can iterate now utilizing some of these techniques, even the biology understanding quicker to get to hopefully therapeutic interventions. Let's see here. So looking more at healthcare, some of the ways that we can utilize technology to make healthcare better is kind of what I'm trying to show in this graphic. So I don't know about the rest of you, but to me, in general, healthcare seems very inconvenient. My model of healthcare is, I mean, it's great what it does, but it's hard to get into. It's hard to know how to get into it, and it's hard to know what your outcome would be at the start. My model for the way health works is you become broken, and at that point, you become a patient. When you're a patient, you can go into health, and hopefully they'll cure the disease or the state that you have. Often they just will mitigate or reduce the symptoms of it. And at the very end, you find out how much it costs. And that's even if you have insurance. You know, it's so convoluted and difficult to figure out how to get into it intelligently, making decisions like you would make buying a car. And that can go away to a large degree. Telehealth is one aspect of applying technology in a very simple form to existing healthcare. And telehealth has been going on for decades now. It really became prevalent over COVID when people could not meet person to person at a lot of times. But a lot of the underpinnings of telehealth has been going on for decades. It's just that it shot up probably at least an order of magnitude in usage over COVID. And basically what this is doing is bringing the clinician to the patient over distance. And there's a lot of ways of doing this. So, some of them might just be a Zoom call with your physician in the simplest form. In more complex forms, there are devices that could be in the home of a person that help monitor some of their signals, particularly chronic conditions, and send this back to the doctor. They can monitor it over time and
still in the car.
intervene when they need to.
Pocket by my left leg. I know I had it.
See if we can. And so anyway, telehealth has evolved a good bit, and there's new instrumentation that's becoming part of that. So for instance, with my kid, she had a lot of earaches and ear infections as a kid. I was able to buy off of Amazon, you know, a $60 little scope to look in the ear and take a picture. I can then look at that or send it to the doc and see, hey, do I need to bring her in, or can you prescribe drugs at this point? They have other ones that are designed, and that was not a medical grade one. It's just something that I was able to do. But there are other methods and technologies out there that make that more convenient. And I do think we're going to start seeing more of telehealth happening both from the home to the clinician, but also in regional areas to where you may not have, like, let's say areas in rural Texas or areas that are far away from a hospital. Now you can triage the patient to a level. I don't think anything is as good as the in-person visit, nor do I think that will happen in the next couple of decades. But you can get a lot of the information and make decisions, for instance, whether that patient really needs to fly into the big city to have a procedure or not. You can get more telemetry that way. And that deals a lot with IoT. It deals a lot with secure communications and a lot of things that we touch in other areas and industries as well. Let me slow down for just a second. Any big questions at this point? Let's see.
Well,
Yep.
Scott, this healthcare is a good field to get into, but AI itself is large language modeling, is it not?
That is one of the forms of AI.
Okay, what are the other forms, if you can educate me?
Yeah, sure. So machine learning is one. So it's a little bit different. The large language models are basically derived from looking at the internet a few years ago and figuring out how people talk and finish their sentences and things like that.
Sure.
So the large language models, I think, are going to be helpful to healthcare in helping. Well, stepping back for a second, one of the biggest reasons for burnout in health, and I think over 50% of clinicians say they're burnt out to some level, is all the paperwork that they're having to do, all the additional record keeping that they're having to do. Large language models, I think, can help in that area, and they can be done in a way that's private, so the patient information doesn't make it into that model. But that's just one of the forms of artificial intelligence. Another one that's very common that we don't hear of as much nowadays, just because of the LLMs out there, is machine learning. So what machine learning does...
I've heard about it. Yes. Okay, go ahead. Finish your thought. IoT is another one. Yeah.
Right. And so machine learning, well, and this is actually just mentioning some other things that y'all might want to talk about, but that's the majority of the presentation, so I don't mind jumping into this now.
Sure.
On the machine learning, what it does is basically a statistical analysis doing regressions on a lot of data points from whatever it's looking at. So it almost seems like magic in what it can come up with, but it takes like pixels in a picture, and it will then create a neural network computationally that looks at a lot of variables, and then those variables are weighted, and it could go through a number of levels, kind of like the way our eye perceives information, and it goes to our brain and perceives it a little bit more, and then that goes down to our intent, and then we like move our arm or something like that. It works in a similar way, and that's why they call it kind of neural networks. It is different, obviously. It deals with binary zeros and ones versus chemicals and weightings and frequencies of our brain, but functionally it kind of works in a similar way. So you're going to, by our computational power that we have these days, you can do one with thousands or millions of nodes looking at a set of data over time, and you program it based upon whether it got it right or wrong. And then eventually they kind of reorganize themselves in a way that is useful. And I'm not an expert on that at all. This is kind of my understanding of it. But conceivably what it's been done and how it's been used in the past, like that first example I gave early in the presentation of looking at mammography radiographs. It can go in and it can like hone in and highlight where it thinks a lesion might be. And it does that based upon taking thousands or millions or tens of millions of radiographs that have been confirmed by a clinician as to whether it's cancer or precancer or not. So then it's able to do it. The value proposition of it is that it's able to do it quicker.
Yeah.
But again, it's doing one thing. It's looking at one image, one result.
What is IoT got to do with all this?
So IoT really it is not artificial intelligence at all, but it is more of a communications protocol. So with IoT, what it's doing is it's taking what can happen, like for instance, in the cloud where you have huge computational power to the edge where you have maybe smaller processors to where it might do some of that work first before it sends it off. An example that I've heard recently, I heard that there is a language model being put into the iPhone 15 that does better prediction when you're doing your text and filling out the next word and spell checking and things like that. That's something that can happen at the edge. If you want to really go in and do a grammatical check and check it for like what some of the plugins you can have for your web browser do that might go in and say, hey, does this look professional, or what audience this is going for, that might take the computational power necessary from the cloud. But the common things that you might do are put down to the edge and become IoT features.
Yeah. No, that's okay. I appreciate that.
Yeah, one quick question based on what you just showed. There's a lot of imaging that goes in and essentially makes image slices of a 3D object in your body. Does that lend itself immediately to bioprinting?
Yes and no. So one of the tricks on like conventional 3D printing, and this affects bioprinting to a lesser extent, but is that you have to make sure you have completely enclosed volumes before you slice it, right? So we're coming with slice things, trying to reconstruct a volume and then slicing it again, because it's probably not going to scan at the same rate we're printing. And so these are challenges that have largely been kind of worked out in the past, but they're still kind of a pain to deal with conventional 3D printers. Another thing is when you're doing the bioprinting, if you take a slice, for instance, of say a finger, okay? The finger, you go in and you take computational slices of it. You see the bone, the tendons, the ligaments, the skin, the nail, and maybe the nerves, right? Each one would require a different type of cell. So if we were bioprinting that would be very complex. We might have to have bone cells that have calcium in them, and we might have to have skin cells in an organization that would recreate your fingerprint. There's a lot of complexity in that. So we're starting with simpler things that might only have 1, 2, 3, or 4 cell types, getting that right, and then we're going to go on and add more to it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Scott, one of the areas that I've seen a lot of activity in with AI is in drug discovery, especially for retargeting existing drugs to new problems.
That is definitely true. And I'm not an expert in that area, but I've talked to a lot of companies that are doing that, and I think all of them are doing it a little bit differently. But the main thing, the idea is, let's predict what these drugs are going to do based upon what we know already, based upon what we know in the physics of the drug, and based upon what we know about the biology of the thing we're trying to interact with. So, for instance, if a drug, to use a previous cancer example, if the drug was designed to target something on a cancer cell, and that same target might be on a healthy cell, maybe they want to re-engineer that a little bit to make it more specific for the cancer cell. The AI can go through iterations of what, if we produce the biologic in a certain way, how it will fit lock and key with the receptors that we have data on. And it could do that in silico and do it, it could go through, billions of calculations a lot faster than going through experiments in the lab. And that's one way it's being used. And they're doing a lot of different ways that I don't even know about at this point as well.
The stuff that I saw, and I'm not an expert on it either, but the stuff I saw, it looked like they were actually taking large language models and saying, here's the literature on all the drugs we know about, see if anything sounds similar to the stuff that we're trying to cure now.
Yeah, and that brings me back to a conversation I had, I forget, maybe 10 years ago with someone. He was a guy that just started working for IBM, and they were pushing a lot of the Watson Health type initiatives. And he said just that, it's gone in and scanned all the journal articles on health, and it's applying them together to help give you answers to what you need. And I kind of asked him at the time, tongue in cheek, it's like, how does it deal with the fact that a third or whatever it was of the articles cannot be reproduced in the lab? And it's like, oh, and interesting things happen after that. But I do think something is there, and I think something that we really need to do in health and beyond health in general with the AI and the large language models is figure out how do we train them on truth, on what really is reproducible, what really works versus what is out there. Because we all know there's things out there that aren't truth to us. So however you define that, I guess. So I think that's a challenge that we'll have. I think there will be some early wins. There'll be a lot of failures, but I think we're going to get there and be able to do it quicker. So think about it this way: if you take the DNA that we have and you take a disease state and kind of a model, I guess, of the organ that it affects, and you might be able to, from that, find out what part of the DNA is causing one population to be more susceptible to a disease than the other. That could be an interesting way of looking at it. And then, once we know kind of that pathway, we can then find ways to intervene in that pathway, but also target drugs to the people they will work with. One of the things that I've never gotten a good answer for, but a lot of times they'll come out with the first drug for a condition, and then other drugs will come out. And the first drug might say, hey, this is effective in 40% of the people. And the new drug might come out and say it's only effective in 30%. Does that mean it's worse than the first? Well, it's only worse than the first if the first drug will not cure that 30%. If it's a different 30% than that 40%, it can have a lot of value. And that's where a lot of the, I didn't mention this earlier, I don't think, but the personalized medicine comes in, which affects everything that we've talked about tonight, to where, we might be able to predict by either doing a test or by looking at DNA or some other metric, whether or not it's likely that a certain intervention, whether it be drug, physical therapy, or anything else, will likely work with that particular patient versus in general. Because when a drug is 50% effective, all you care about is it effective on you or your loved one. You don't really, you care in general, but you really care of whether it will work for the person that you're thinking of at the time. And that's really where we have to get. And I think personalized medicine will do that, or help us do that. I think it will also create, allow us to create drugs quicker that work on certain groups, which has its own kind of ethical issues that have to be worked into that as well.
Sure. Scott, I've got just a quick question for you.
Sure.
Do you know how many brain cells we have?
Billions.
No, not no, seriously. Wall Street Journal was telling the readers, me, that recently I just read it, 3,000.
Nah.
Yes, well, I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's not a peer-reviewed journal, but
Well, I don't know. It's a Wall Street Journal, so who knows?
Yeah,
what the
I
hell
looked that up. But
Oh, you did? Mm-hmm.
No, I'll have to in the future. But
Okay.
The one thing is, you know, a lot of the neurons, for instance,
Yeah.
they go down our spine. You know, it will be the same cell going from your brain all the way down to your tailbone. You know, a lot of these nerves, these cells are very long and very big, so that they are different, totally different than a skin cell or, you know, say a hair follicle cell. A lot of the cells have different expressions and techniques, and it makes it really hard to cure them if they're broken. Or, you know, can we re-energize a cell that's broken, or do we have to replace it? And how we try to approach that is very application specific. But
so there is no 3,000 brain cells, correct? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah. There's a lot more than 3,000. But you know, one of the things with the brain cells is that they are connected and interconnected in a lot of ways. So each cell will probably connect to many others. So looking at the network effect of that, it creates kind of an interentanglement to where it's mind-boggling in a lot of ways. But it's what allows us to think and do what we do. Let's see. I'm gonna look up something here real quick.
No, anyway, it came in Wall Street Journal. I was reading it the other day, and I said, man.
So quick Google search tells me 86 billion neurons in the brain, but
oh, you're talking about something else, yes.
Yeah, it might be talking about the average number of connections of one brain cell to another. That would not surprise me if it's in the 3,000 range.
Yeah, the 3,000 range. And see, I was wondering if the older a person gets, maybe the brain cell, for lack of better English, the brain cells might be disoriented or whatever, confused or whatever the hell it is happening right at the moment with this person.
Well, you know, one of the things I heard recently that I thought was interesting, you know, how, like, you know, as people get older, a lot of times, you know, reaction time might go down, and it might, you know,
reflexes, yeah.
Well, and also they might, you know, have fewer people that they talk to more. They might, there's a lot of things that happen, and the thought process is that you have learned so much over time that you have more interconnections of the brain cells that you have, and that you just kind of know a lot more and are able to utilize that in ways to where you don't have to go in absorbing new information all the time like you might as a kid. But you know,
that's true. Yeah.
You know,
so when does this stop? When does all this stop? Like 55, 70, 65,
well,
80?
And I haven't kept up with this, but I remember in grad school looking up some of it. So there are some brain cells that are growing all the time. They don't have a whole lot, you know, across the board, but there are also brain cells that are dying and cells that are pruning. So that network, the interconnected mesh of neurons connecting to each other, it will prune and renew. And so things it needs to remember faster, it can remember faster. It makes those networks work better. The things that it doesn't use as much, they may lose off, is kind of the theory. And but different types of brain cells as well. And some of them grow and produce chemicals and things like that over time. Other ones don't. And sometimes it's based upon, you know, things that you can do. I think, again, this is just kind of from memory, and it may be totally wrong, but I think there are something like exercise impacts some of the things that might be going on in your brain. Learning and thinking and things like that help as well. It seems like it kind of fits into what they've said in a lot of areas. If you snooze, you lose kind of thing. If you don't use it, it might go away. I don't think that's fully true, but I think the effects, it's kind of a good rule of thumb to think about.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, I understand.
Scott, before you get away from us, I'd like to ask you a more general question, if you don't mind, about how do we advise our young students in bioengineering coming up to expect in the industry? You've had a remarkable career and touched down in a number of different fields. Is this what the graduating student might expect, that short-term employment at a number of smaller companies, or will there be larger companies dominating in this field, like the large Medtronics, the large pharmaceutical companies?
You know, a lot of it depends kind of on the area that they're interested in. So there are a lot of device companies like Medtronics and so forth that make the instruments that can scan and diagnose and things like that, and a lot of the equipment used by the surgeons. And then there's also implantable devices. There's a lot of subspecialties in the area. So, you know, I think part of it is finding out where the interest is and learning things that would help in that area. You know, career-wise, I'm very non-traditional. Like I said, you know, I was out of undergrad 10 years before I ever went into grad school. I sold a company in that process as well, and things like that. So I approached it differently. So I may not be the best one to answer that, but a lot of people that are in this field enjoy what they're doing. And, you know, there's someone interested in it, have them talk to, you know, reach out on LinkedIn or something and find someone that they're interested in their work, talk to them about that. That's also a good way to get into labs at universities to gain some of that experience, because sometimes that's a sought after thing that's hard to get into. Interest goes a long way, because this is hard work. You know, with the bioprinting company, that unfortunately finally closed down about a month ago. It had been around for about 10 years. It was just hard to do. It's hard to fund that type of work. And it's very slow, excruciating work. Sometimes you don't get paid for years at the time. And so that's difficult. The companies that are out there, if they're around, you know, that's the way I would do it if I were to do it over again. I just kind of went into the entrepreneurial thing after grad school, but there are ways to learn and focus the work you're doing on in the area. And again, interest-based. There's plenty of directions to go.
Excellent. Good advice. Thank you.
Well, I've got my contact information here. If anyone wants to talk more at a later point in time, just reach out. But you know, happy to answer any other questions as well, or have a conversation. I would like to ask all of you if any of you are aware of technologies that you think might be helpful to health in any way, whether it be from the early discovery in biology all the way to helping humans.
This is Kai. I saw your single page display of topics. You said quantum biotech. Can you define what that is?
Yeah, sure. So quantum, that kind of fits into the nanotechnology side. So and basically utilizing the nanotechnology to create ways of visualizing things that you can't see by other methods. So like light microscopy, you know, we're limited in the feature size of what we can see based on physics. So with some of these like quantum dots and nanoparticles, what we're able to do is take something that will receive one radiation, so like light radiation, whether it be infrared or ultraviolet, and then fluorescent in another area. And then since it creates so many photons, we're able to track those and see what we're looking at. I might have also been talking about quantum computing, and quantum computing is, you know, you may know more about it than I do. I've talked to a lot of people in the space, and I understand a lot of the limits of using it. I haven't figured out exactly how it fits into all of this yet, but it probably will. Quantum computing, you know, basically it doesn't use bits, zeros, and ones like conventional computing does. It's using the quantum mechanics of the, I guess I call them processors, to find things that are kind of nonlinear. The challenge is, you know, they can do things super fast and utilize quantum effects that I don't even know about. But the challenge is getting the question you might have for it into it. And that's where I think the bottleneck is. But so I don't know if it will work like in a machine learning model where you have a whole lot of data going in and you're trying to find a similarity. But some areas I know they're using it are like in breaking passwords or communicating without being heard and things like that.
Yeah. So my understanding is that quantum engineering is computing is more for multiple stage kind of you have a lot of variable. Probably in biology, you have a lot of data point. You want to do parallel processing. I think quantum computing will be a good tool to use. But by itself, I try to link up. It's a tool for biotech, but not a direct link with each other. I think quantum thought is a different thing. It's like you do in a display or some other area. So that's a known quantity.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and as we're talking more, I think one application of it will probably be, we talked a little bit about the in silico drug discovery. So trying to find drugs that might interact with a target quicker, utilizing information we have in the computer. Well, quantum computing might be able to do that quicker because those interactions are very difficult. So, a lot of times what they're doing is they're computationally recreating all the atoms in the protein that's part of that drug and figuring out how it's going to fit to the protein that is part of the cell. So, you can have thousands to millions of atoms, each one interacting based on quantum physics with the other ones. When they start folding around, it even becomes more complex. You can computationally chase it and see if you can get to a steady state. But I would imagine with quantum computing, it might be able to do that a lot quicker, a lot easier.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Maybe we should start that up if it hasn't been done yet. That might be the new thing.
So it's still a technology under development.
Yes.
Yeah. Or using a tool or could be a field by itself. And earlier you talk about the Cas9, CS9 in your DNA editing. So can you clarify what Cas9 is?
Yeah, so it's chimeric antigen receptor. So chimeric means kind of a blend of two creatures. I think it's a mythical figure or something. And what they're doing basically is they're taking a cell out of the body, a T cell. So the T cells are the cells that go in and fight invading viruses cells, and they go in and kill the cells that have cancer in them or viruses in them to stop the spread of that. A lot of times, and we have a lot of them in our bodies that are circulating. So when an infection comes in, the cells will be activated, and then they grow a lot and they reproduce, thousands, hundreds of millions. I don't know the exact number, but they reproduce a lot so that they can go in bulk and in force and kill all the invader cells that are coming in or the cells that are impacted by those invaders. So what Cas9 does is it allows us to, I'm sorry, I'm talking about CAR T right now. I'll finish this first. But with CAR T, what it does is to go in and you engineer the cell based on a receptor that say a cancer cell has. So you use your own body's mechanism of fighting, and you're basically training it to go in and kill cells that it couldn't do based on the way your body's been built. And by utilizing that mechanism that's already there, just coordinating the effect by engineering the cell, I think it's a very elegant solution. And CAR Ts are working a lot with blood cancers. And the reason it works with blood cancers is the cells can get in the blood and find the cells that are cancerous. And I think they're starting to look at that with some solid tumors as well. But it's really, it's very elegant because our body's ability, when it kills a cell that needs to be out of the system, it has a method of doing that cleanly. So this is, by utilizing what our body can always do, but just kind of training it to do it better. I think it's a very elegant solution, and it's good to see some of those in the market. They're very expensive now. I think the cost will come down tremendously and hopefully fairly quickly.
I see. Okay.
And the Cas9 is one of the proteins that will go in and allow you to find a part of DNA that you want to replace and insert a load into it that will be different. So when I was talking earlier about the like genetic diseases that might cause something to happen later in life, if we could theoretically go in and always get the right chunk of DNA that we want to pull out and put the right chunk in, then maybe we can keep that from happening. A lot of complexity to that. I think it's happening more in the dish, but because you may want to do that in one organ system, but not another. So how you deliver that is complex. It's a lot easier to do in the lab than in humans.
Scott, isn't Cas9 just a version of CRISPR?
Yeah, it's the molecule that they use in CRISPR.
Okay.
And again, that's not my, let's see what I had in here. That's definitely not in my expertise realm, but I've heard a little bit about it. Let's see, what did I have here?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, it cuts, inserts, and then hopefully the cell is good from that point. You know, one of the things that I do remember seeing is, you know, it may not be 100% in where it does do the insertion, and that may or may not cause a problem. They do use, I think, a similar technique to genetically engineer some animal models. For instance, one of the things I know they do with some of them is they might insert a jellyfish protein that allows them to fluoresce green under ultraviolet light. And that then can be used to create cell lines that you can follow easier among other cell lines. And I've used that extensively in my research.
Maybe more than 10 years ago, I was in Rice University talk about doing plant cancer curing with a nanotech using some very fine silver or gold particles. And,
Okay.
put into
According
there
to
anything
Chat AI,
it's
we
successful now?
have about 86 billion neurons in 3,000 brain cell types.
So
Total
my
number
question
of
is,
brain
nanotech,
cells, neurons plus glial
yeah, Bahrain is reading something from the
brain cells is
so
about
is the plant
140
cure
billion.
successful using a gold or silver particle?
Yeah, so the gold is often used in the nanoparticles, like I mentioned earlier.
Right.
And the good thing about it is gold, they can do a lot of chemistry on it to put different antigens in the outside to help it be attracted to a particular cell. Gold also has the ability to fluoresce. So by changing the size and the diameter of the gold nanoparticles, they get a different fluorescence based upon incident light coming into them. So, you know, not only can they possibly connect to the right part of the cell or a cancer or something like that, they can show a different color in it. So, you know, if you think about it, so how we use this in the lab is, you know, I would use some fluorescent nanoparticles. I think a lot of them were gold that would attract to the internal cytoskeleton, skeleton within the cell, and it would show, so you could show in fluorescence microscope where those were and how that cell was kind of connecting to different things around it. And you can use different colors to connect to different things. So you can really look into the cell and see a lot of the substructure of that cell and actually see it live and how it might be changing around over time. Theory is the same things could be used in surgery, for instance. So say someone is doing brain surgery to get rid of a glioblastoma. You know, you want to get all cancer cells, because if you don't, they'll probably grow again and re-expand that tumor. At the same time, you want to save all the healthy tissue around it. So it's kind of a hard choice for the surgeons. The surgeons will generally take the tumor out and a little bit of the surrounding area. But if you use something like these nanoparticles and put them in the brain or wherever the cancer is, and just put a color light source on top of it, you can see where those cancerous cells are and just excise all of those, but really keep the healthy tissue more intact. The problem is, you know, you've got to prove first that those nanoparticles will not cause any downstream problems with the patient. You have to go through the regulatory process, and that's expensive and long. But that is the kind of the idea of what you might be able to do with them. And I think we'll start seeing a lot more of those going forward.
You also use gold to make the visible lines on COVID tests and things like that. They're attached to antibodies that match the COVID antigens, and the gold makes it visible, and they all collect them.
Yeah, yeah. Gold is used a lot. Luckily, it's a very small amount, so the cost is low. It's more processing than the materials, but and gold is very biocompatible.
So I think Louis just did a Google search, or he found the definition of the brain cell. The 3,000 numbers is the type, brain cell type, but there are about 86 billion neurons that connected to the site. So that answer Brian's questions.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that. Hope that helps.
Definitely. And hopefully I have that many. I would like to figure out, like what Elon Musk is doing down the street, trying to create neural implants to control things. I don't know where that's going, but it'd be interesting to see if you could do a RAM upgrade or something and get a little bit more memory or faster processing or something like that. Any ideas from you guys on technologies that might be applicable to either health or biotech or anything in that area?
So
Well,
I don't know what technology per se, but there is something, there's probably technology there, but that strikes me about, you mentioned telehealth.
Mm-hmm.
And something I've been seeing over time is that if you go see a doctor, the younger doctors do a lot less touching of your body. They don't often even look at you. They get a readout of your blood, for instance, and they look for anything that's out of bounds. I've also had the experience with eye doctors who are now getting readouts of, I don't exactly know what's on there, but key parameters when they look at your eye, and the machine makes a number of measurements, and they look at those scans and graphs rather than taking your eye and really looking carefully inside of it. So more and more, even the health practitioners are depending on something they could do with telehealth rather than having the person in front of them. But I'm wondering if there is elements being lost there, and that might be, that's some of your black box question, right?
Mm-hmm. No, you're absolutely right.
What are those elements, and could you make them part of an AI system if you knew what they were, right?
Well, kind of that reminds me is one of my pet peeves. When you go in for an annual physical, a lot of times at the end of it, they'll do blood work and then they'll get the results a week later. And what do they do with it at that point? Unless there's something that's going to cause you to die immediately, they'll tell you about it the next year. So we're not able to utilize the data we have for actionable things, minimally a conversation with a patient kind of thing. So, I do think it is an interesting observation. I hadn't thought about that a lot of the new guys are used to using the technology more in health, and they may look at that and think that's the entire story. A lot of times when you get into the nuance and the complexity of health conditions, it's a conversation you have with your physician, and they're able to extract things you may not know the word to use, right? My knee hurts and my elbow hurts and my eye hurts, and they go, oh, you've got a broken finger. It takes that conversation and that nuance to sometimes tease out where the problems are.
Well, it's also a matter that people are all individuals, and I appreciate statistics as much as the next guy, but if you tell me I'm slightly out of bounds on a parameter and we should do a lot more testing, and you find out, well, it didn't really see anything. And then if you talk to the person, you find out, they're 60 or 70 years old, and they frequently, this parameter, they've been out of bounds their whole life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there is an important thing in dealing with the individual statistic, even though you look at statistics for the most part, people don't necessarily fit it ideally into those curves.
And a lot of times they probably don't at all. Well, you mentioned, the temporal aspect of it. And it reminds me, so I went to a dentist once and they said, oh, we have, you've got 30 places where you need to do a amalgam and you don't need to quite, I'll give you a deal today. And then, that was 15 years ago. And I've been to many dentists since, and they say, oh, well, the good ones will say, oh, well, let's just watch this. Well, they've been watching it for 30 years and it's not changing, so it doesn't need to be changed. Having that temporal information is important. There's no health records really in dentistry unless you stay with the same one. And there's that aspect. But one thing that, earlier when I was thinking about this conversation, bring this up is I think some of you guys might appreciate this. There's a quantizing problem in health and the way we do these things. For instance, you do, like if you go for annual physical, they'll do your blood test each year kind of thing, right? Yeah. So one of the things they check for is cholesterol. I had my doctor once tell me, hey, your cholesterol is a little bit elevated. Eat well and work out and we'll check it again next year. You don't need any meds, it's slightly out of whack, but eat well and exercise and we'll check it in a year. I don't know about you guys, but I would not eat well and work out every day based upon that. I mean, I do it for other reasons, but if we could then check these things more often, and this is one of the things I've thought about starting up for a long time, check everything more often, get that data, understand that data. And then when there's a problem, we look back over time and see if there were any indicators of this progression, because we don't want to get broke and then get fixed. We want to keep ourselves from getting broken. We want to stave off disease and never get it. We don't want to get it and then cure it. We want to keep it away. Healthcare, the way we deploy it, pretty much internationally, does not lend to that. So how do we use AI and things like that to get to that? Because the doctors are doing things very scientifically. We want to have seen a test where we prove this with double blind and everything like that to where we know it works, right? There's resistance for looking at, like, for instance, blood tests on a monthly basis, unless it's in a particular condition where it's warranted, because they don't know how to interpret that data, because the data they have on the clinical trials is checking it once a year or episodically when there is a condition. What would happen if we had more data and then we can analyze that and find trends before something actually happened? I think that's where a lot of the computational approaches are really
And what that would need to be combined with, another term we don't hear a lot today, is expert system, right? 20 years ago, AI in certain realms was sitting down with a number of doctors who were good diagnosticians and trying to capture their thoughts. So, you could apply that to have a computer help do that. And of course, now we're doing tons and tons of data and, using generative AI, but there was something in interviewing those few doctors who are good diagnosticians. And I don't know where that thread is, or is it just lost today?
No, I think that continues. And I think a lot of the early image analysis was based on just that. And the thing is, even stepping back another step from that, who's to say that the doctor's diagnosis is right? We're setting that as truth, but it may not be until you confirm that it's true, right? So, they had a X Prize, I think around 10 years ago, for creating a tricorder-like thing, like a Star Trek tricorder. They would go in and look at a patient and find out, try to diagnose if they had a cold, if they had strep, if they had ear infections, things like that. And I thought about getting a team together and entering, but they wanted, the winner would be the one that was able to most closely match what the physicians diagnosed that same patient for. I was looking at a bifurcated output, one to be what the physicians would diagnose with, and the other would be one that's even more accurate than that. And, it's very difficult, what I just mentioned, it's very difficult to get something like that into the healthcare arena, because it's a lot easier to get regulatory approval on something that you show is substantially equivalent to something that's already out there in general than it is to get something that you say is better. Because substantial equivalent might be a few $100,000 for your budget. To say it's substantial or to say it's better, it might be tens of millions. So, it's one of the things that unfortunately keeps the incrementing progress from happening. Well, great. Well, I appreciate you guys listening. If anyone has any other ideas or wants to take anything offline, feel free to reach out. And I enjoyed talking to y'all today.
Okay. Baron, you have another question?
No.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for a very nice introduction to biotechnology. So we'll learn a lot. From the audience, any more questions? If not, let's thank Scott for a great evening. And I'll see you in November. All right, thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.